One of the major conclusions you come to in your report is that the Negro family has deteriorated. Now, how is that generalization justified in view of the great growth of the Negro middle class?
Well, that's the important point. It seems to me that there are a great many Negro Americans, perhaps half the population, is securely in the middle class, doing very well, taking care of itself, needing no help from anybody, thank you very much. But the slums are also filling up with a lower class people, unemployed, ill-educated, ill-housed, for whom the cycle of no jobs and bad education and bad housing just reproduces itself in and takes its most poignant personal form in the great tragedy of the family lives of these men and women and of their children.
So what compelled you to come together and bring this type of panel to life? Like, what was your thought process behind it?
Well, in all of my classes, I tell my students that everything, if you want to understand what's going on today, you need a historical context to it to understand it. And the Moynihan report in March is its 50th year anniversary. And the key thing with the Moynihan report, whether you agree with it or not, is simply that the arguments that were made about the Moynihan report in 1965 explain a lot of our political discourse today. The idea that the simple answer to crime in the black community is get black families intact and jobs.
The emphasis on job training. The point is we want to move people out of welfare, not to improve welfare. It's turned out to be destructive to the people, corrosive to the society. We want to get them into work. And as the President has provided unprecedented amounts of money to do just this.
My friends, some years ago, the federal government declared war on poverty, and poverty won. Today, the federal government has 59 major welfare programs and spends more than $100 billion a year on them. What has all this money done? Well, too often it has only made poverty harder to escape. Federal welfare programs have created a massive social problem. With the best of intentions, government created a poverty trap that wreaks havoc on the very support system the poor need most to lift themselves out of poverty, the family. Dependency has become the one enduring heirloom passed from one generation to the next of too many fragmented families. It's time, this may be the most radical thing I've said in 7 years in this office, it's time for Washington to show a little humility.
I want them to when they hear arguments, when they hear political arguments, regardless of where they come about on the political spectrum, when they hear arguments, realize that those arguments are not coming out of a vacuum. They're not coming out of one particular election cycle. They are very old. Many of our social political arguments that we're having date back to President Roosevelt and have followed every president from Roosevelt all the way to Obama. Many of the things that we wanted to achieve date back from Truman all the way to President Obama. There's a history to our political discourse. And a lot of our students, and a lot of people generally in society, don't realize there's a historical context. So if they leave this conference, one, hearing about the Moynihan report, wanting to read it themselves, find out what's in it, and realize, wait a second, this discussion about the black family in 1965 that we're having in 2015 is almost identical. The issues are almost identical. The terms are almost identical. The passions are almost identical. And so the idea that it just didn't happen today, that it has decades-long longevity and history, that's what I want them to take away from the conference initially.